So I like to just start out, I like to just say like, introduce myself, and get to know you a little bit. So if you don't mind, or maybe you weren't expecting to be put on the spot, I'm just gonna ask you a little bit about yourself. Or if you wanted to share a little bit about yourself and maybe why you got into real estate.
That's fine.
Okay,
Um, what do you want to know? I guess. Um, I just got licensed in October. I
okay,
always wanted to do real estate. I just never been financially in a position where I could have like an inconsistent like income source. So I've been a stay-at-home mom and I just jumped in this year. My kids are getting to like school age, so I thought now's a good time. And yeah, before
yeah,
this, before being like stay at home, I worked in like inside sales. So
okay. And how old are your kids?
I have an 11-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Okay, mine are 7 and 5, so I feel like I'm kind of in the same season as you. And like yourself, I also, my former job was education. So I worked in special education in middle school, as a teacher. And then I was also a stay-at-home mom. And then my husband started this business and, I just got to jump on in and do this. And then my other question for you, Adriana, would be what questions do you have about inspections, or what are you hoping to like gain today? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Just from like my own experiences, I think I get most of
Okay.
like the home inspection, like the process and everything, but I guess just learning a little more of like your role in it and
Okay.
yeah.
Alrighty, I can do that. So then I'll just go ahead and get started, and feel free to like unmute and ask a question at any time. This is super casual. You too, Isaac. Just kidding. Don't you use the mouse? There we go. Okay. So we're just kind of doing like an intro of the basics today. So this is kind of to introduce myself or our company a little bit more. My husband Blake, he owns the company. We were middle school sweethearts, as like gross and weird as that is, and then we've been married for over 12 years. Um, and we kind of say he went from army to entrepreneur, and then he also has 8 years of construction experience. And then I already told you kind of my background, and then I am more of the office manager role. And then we also have Josh, who is a licensed inspector and also brings 8 years of construction experience, which works out great for us because Blake and Josh, their construction experience is in opposite things. So it's kind of nice that they have more knowledge basis on different items. And then we're veteran owned with Blake, and then we're family operated. So that's just a little bit about us. And then today, like the goal would just be to have like an intro of home inspections and what they are, and then hopefully help you feel like you can relay inspection information to your clients, strengthen your ability to how to interpret common issues found by home inspectors, and then protect your clients from potential home disasters. So during the presentation today, we'll just use kind of the term like home buyer and client, but knowing that a home inspection could happen at kind of any point in the process. You could have a client that's listing their house and wants to do a pre-listing inspection. We have heard from realtors that they find that useful for various reasons. Sometimes, like if you have someone with a type A personality that would prefer to kind of know that information ahead of time, that would be me. Or we also know people or realtors who have a client that maybe their house isn't really in like ready to list conditions, and it kind of softens the blow if we're the bad guy that comes in and is like, here's the report, versus you having to maybe say to your client, you need to do this and this and this, or if you say that to them and kind of struggling with where they're like, oh, it's totally fine. And that comes down to more of like their house is full of stuff, or something you think that maybe should be fixed before it gets put on the market and they're kind of telling you no. So that's kind of an option. Obviously, then through the home buying process, that's an option. And then also we have clients that prefer, they're really busy. They would prefer that we come do an inspection on their house and then we kind of hand deliver them their task list, their own like customized home maintenance list. So there's a couple of ways home inspections happen. And there's also commercial inspections too. So if you had clients that were purchasing like commercial property. So home inspections are optional. You probably already know that. And then the whole objective to it is just to protect the client from an unpleasant and often expensive repair surprise. I have a really good example of this. We had somebody just from last week call us. They've been in their house only 15 months and they call us because they found mold. We have like, I own a sister company that does mold remediation. So they called for that. And so they're telling us this story of how, yeah, they moved in 15 months ago and there's all this mold in the house. They went to sell the house and it was gonna be wrapped up in the negotiations of closing, that they were gonna pay for the mold remediation during closing. Deal fell through. Now they don't have any way to financially pay for mold remediation and it's obviously like kind of infested in their house. And so I think that was one of the ways where we didn't want to go out of our way and be like, did you have a home inspection done or not? You know, kind of felt like we were stepping on some toes there with that, but it made me really feel bad for them, thinking like, gosh, a couple $100 could have saved them potentially $6,000. Because what happened was, it's not just that there was mold in the house, it wasn't properly ventilated in the attic. And so that's what's causing the mold issue, where you can clean the mold, but it's gonna come back because it doesn't fix the problem. And so that was kind of one of them where we were like, oh man, like a couple $100 to like $6,000. So that's just an example. And then it can complete the sale and then it helps to increase your buyer's confidence in making an offer and confirms like their decision in their purchase. It's important to us. We kind of hope all inspectors feel like this, but we don't know all inspectors, we only know us. This is a huge decision that your client's going to make. One of the most important or biggest decisions of their life, probably in the top 5. We don't take that lightly and we look at it with the eyes of like, how would we want someone to communicate this to us? What would we want to know? They deliver a higher level. So home inspections can deliver a higher level of service and reliability to clients. It can demonstrate your professionalism, and bring additional referrals from satisfied clients. And then it reduces your liability as the realtor and kind of transfers some of that onto the inspector. And then your inspector's goals, no matter who it is, it should always be to share unbiased information about major components and safety issues in the house, to discuss repairs, maintenance, or safety issues, and then to just help move the sale forward. So that doesn't mean, I like to kind of pause with that because I feel like it can be misconstrued. We're not trying to break a deal, but we're also like, we're just here to report the facts. So that's what's really important to us. So it's not to scare a client away, but also like if it's not in the best interest of your client, that's where we trust you as the realtor to have that conversation with them. You know their price point, what they can afford. You probably know from talking to the listing agent what their client's willing to repair or not do. So like, that's not our job, like that's, we put that more on, obviously that's your expert field, not ours, and we don't want to step on any toes. So the inspection, what it is, so it's an observation of readily accessible systems and components of the home. So clearly, like, we're not gonna be able to check for the wiring inside of a wall. That's not possible. We also, by our standards of practice, aren't allowed to move items. So if someone, if a listing had tons of boxes in the attic and we can't access the attic stairs, then we can't move those boxes. And so that's just kind of nice to know, if you're on the buying side or the listing side, and just to if you are on the listing side, make sure major components are accessible, like the attic and the what am I thinking of? The breaker box. And just because I think it helps speed along the transaction for you guys, because it doesn't provide that hiccup of, oh, they couldn't get to this and they're gonna have to come back. And then, it's to identify, conditions that are of significantly deficient or near the end of their service life. And then an inspector's recommendations to correct or monitor said conditions. It's not technically exhaustive, meaning in like the context of a home inspection, it refers to the fact that inspectors don't employ every possible means to uncover deficiencies in the home. It's an observation, it's a visual inspection, so they're limited to the amount of tools and equipment to assist them. So they don't like dismantle or disassemble components or look inside of those. They may use advanced technology. And then, sorry, I just don't want to like read this word for word for you because I feel like it can be really boring. And then like hidden or latent damage, which cannot be seen by an inspection too, is excluded from the scope of the inspection. So it's basically like major components that like you can visually see. Most inspectors do have the option to be able to catch a few things behind walls. It's not everything, but with like thermal imaging, they can. Do you have any questions for me so far, Adriana? Okay. And then just like, I think as realtors, don't you guys have like a code of ethics that you have to follow? Okay, so we have the same thing as home inspectors in the state of Indiana. And so we call it kind of like the scope and limitations are in there, and they're called our standards of practice. Most home inspectors use ASHI. You can kind of see down at the bottom there. It's like it's an acronym. And then, or InterNACHI, if you wanted to look up more information. Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I'm just gonna put these books.
Sorry, Tara popped in, so I had to say hi to her. If you wanted to kind of know then what the scope and limitations are of home inspections, you could gladly like go on there and look at the standards of practice. It's really long and boring and law written, but it can still be helpful, potentially for you to know and help, just be able to communicate that with your client, but it's not required. Yes.
So going back to the last slide, you brought up, like, what you can do is, kind of like big show apply. It's not like behind the walls. Going back to like the mold story, would you only be able to see the mold like visually? You could see it. Okay.
Yeah. So like, you know, sometimes there's people who rip out their shower and then discover it behind the walls. Like, yes, we wouldn't be able to see that. Potentially though, with thermal imaging, they might be able to see that there would be like a moisture intrusion in that area with the thermal imaging camera. Yeah, it's what they can see. With a home inspection, Blake and Josh felt very confident, kind of going back to that mold situation, that the attic would have been called out because it wasn't properly ventilated, and knowing that the proper ventilation or improper ventilation was going to cause moisture intrusion and then mold grows in that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where they were. Does
Gotcha.
that, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so they like to say too that they know a little bit about a lot, not a lot about a little. And it's kind of one of those things where it's a couple $100s to be able to see, you know, a lot of items versus if you had to bring in like an HVAC guy, an electrician, a roofer, all of those people to come out, then you're looking at like thousands of dollars to have them come out. So it's kind of like a nice little like middle ground is what I think of it. So there are limitations. And for instance, if an inspection was more technically exhaustive, this is kind of what I was saying, it would take more hours and would cost thousands of dollars instead of hundreds. And then I think every inspector has this, but again, don't want to make an assumption, but there's a pre-inspection agreement. And so it's designed to communicate to your client what the scope of the inspection is. So like what it will cover, what it does not cover, what standards are followed, and then the fees charged. And then it's important to establish beforehand who will attend the inspection. We love for clients to attend the inspection. It's their investment. We think, I guess, like it's okay if they can't. We have lots that can't, but it's nice when they are in person and you can kind of show them what they're looking at or what you saw. versus on a picture. And again, it's okay if they can't, we have that all the time. We've FaceTime clients, we've had an agent after they get the inspection report, want to have like a three-way call with their client, agent, and the inspector. But we love when clients come to a walkthrough, like we don't discourage that. Some agents prefer to come and like to come, some prefer not to be there. I think that's kind of like up to you, and maybe you probably, Adriana, you have a coach, do you have a coach here or like a mentor?
Yeah, I'm in coaching
Okay.
with Brian.
Okay, that would be a good question for Brian, maybe like what he recommends or what he does for a home inspection and why, if he chooses to attend or not. Some agents just come for the first 30 minutes to kind of pop in and say like, hey, are you finding anything? Some come with their client. Other agents prefer that if we find something really major, that we give them a call ahead of time. That way they can already be maybe be able to be prepared of how to have that conversation with their client, and then also to potentially get somebody on the phone. So like, let's say it was like the HVAC system, noticing a problem. They gave you a call, they noticed that 30 minutes into the inspection, it's an hour and a half before your client's coming. They give you a call and you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna call my HVAC guy. I'm gonna see when he can get out there. And that way you're coming into the walkthrough with your client, or if you're calling them afterwards and you already have a solution in place. So keep that in mind of kind of maybe what you would want to do as an agent, and know that you can communicate that to your inspector too. A home inspection report should be clear and concise. It should adhere to industry standards of practice and cover all major components. It should be delivered in a timely fashion. Ours are guaranteed within 24 hours. And then define terms used as like acceptable, marginal, or defective. And then who owns, sorry, I'm like thinking I want to tell you something, but I think it's in a later slide, so I'll just wait. And then who owns the inspection report? It's the client. So we don't own it. You as the agent don't own it. The client does. So we have to get their permission to be able to give the agent the report. We've literally only had one client in all the years that we've done this say that they didn't, which we were like, that's kind of weird, or a red flag. So we did like let the agent know, just so they could kind of have that conversation with them. So it's up to your client. And maybe just keeping that in mind when wanting to share the report, because I know sometimes it's just easier in a transaction to be able to like screenshot that part of the report to share when like negotiating. I just get their permission ahead of time, is all. Which, I mean, I don't see anyone that would tell you, no, you're trying to help them out.
Stupid question.
Yeah,
So, the report, the client owns the inspection, but you make the report.
yes, correct. Yep, we make the report, but they're the ones that technically like they purchased the home inspection, so they own the report. There's lots of obviously like hands or people involved in a transaction. And sometimes we just like to say that to kind of just have a clear expectation or boundary. And then also just let you know, like, we're not sharing that, even if we know the realtor that's on the other side of it and we work with them, they call like, hey, how'd that go? That's not ours to share. What else? Oh, another thing I was gonna tell you, I loved this. He's a very successful realtor out in Omaha, Nebraska. He came to like one of our conferences that we had, and he was sharing how he communicates an inspection report to a client. And so he talks through how he's had one done at his house, and and it's not pass or fail. We get asked that a lot. It is not a pass or fail thing. And then that he tells his client their job is to go in there and with a fine-tooth comb find things that are wrong. They're going to find things that are wrong. They found things that were wrong in my house when I had a home inspection. The goal is for me and you to look through this list and see what would be like on a maintenance list and what's something major that we should be asking for. And I just love the way that he said that to him. The other thing that he said was, and I think you could use this with any, mortgage, title, all of that. He told them that he's like, just so you remember, they work for you. So like, it kind of took that, it wasn't, it kind of gave them some control back in the situation of, it wasn't that you found all these people or that you picked on, like they work for you. So if you have any questions, ask them questions. If you think of the questions later on, call me, I'll ask them, different things like that, he said to him. And I love the way that he said that, and it seemed to be received really well. All right, characteristics of a good inspector, they're trained, obviously that would be important. They're thorough, but also unbiased. They're courteous and professional. They have the necessary tools and equipment. They have good written and oral communication skills. That is very important to us. It's very important on how we communicate to your client what we're finding. And it's also good to know ahead of time. This is kind of another great tip, like for your home inspector. If you know, like your client is a first-time home buyer, or they're really nervous about this, or they want to buy a house, but their parents don't think it's a good idea, and their parents are coming to the walkthrough too, or they're really scared, or they're like wound tight, like all that's good information to know. I think it kind of helps your home inspector know how to approach them and handle them. Not that they would treat anything differently or not communicate any of the findings, but just know, we all have different personality types. And I think it helps them kind of know, some people just want the facts and want to be in and out in 10 minutes. And some people want to take 45 minutes to discuss every single, and it's just helpful to know. That way we're providing the service that you feel would be the best for your client. And then obviously it'd be very important that your home inspector is insured. And don't feel bad if you asked that or asked for proof. We've had clients, not our clients, but like the client of the listing asked before we were allowed in their house to give them, yes. And I mean, I'm sure something's happened along the way to make them feel that way. So we've had to provide that for people before. So if a client ever asks you that and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, you can ask, it's totally fine. And so your home inspector should generally adhere to the industry standards of practice, inspect readily accessible systems and components, and then have the report that includes the components, an explanation of the deficiencies, recommendations to correct, and then reasons if certain systems or areas were not inspected. So for example, they should check out the attic. Then in the report, it should say, a kind of a picture or a comment of like, there were too many boxes in the way, we could not access the attic, but like we could come back for it. So just to kind of like summarize that there, if it should have been checked and it wasn't checked, it should be in the report that it was not checked. An inspector should not predict the remaining life of systems or components. So my best example is HVAC, kind of grew up in that. My dad owns an HVAC company, so it's kind of more familiar to me than roofs. So what they shouldn't tell you is, oh, this system, it only has like 5 years of life left. Nobody knows that. It's kind of like a car. Is your car going to break down tomorrow, or is it going to last for 5 more years? Nobody knows. What they can tell you is this system was installed in 1989. So I'm just gonna say 35 years old. Hopefully I did the math right and you guys can just nod and be like, it's fine. It'll say like it's 35 years old and the average life of a furnace is 20 years. So they can say that, but they can't tell you if there's only 5 years left, or kind of same thing like with the roof. Yes.
So do you generally have conversations before? I mean, asking this because like, would you be able to know, like, if they were supposed to check something, if it didn't, like, you had that conversation beforehand, where it's like, hey, we're gonna cover this, so the report, if it's like, one thing is missing, that you talk beforehand, or that's like a common sense that you should.
Well, I don't think it's common sense, because I think there's like lots of things, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of components of a house. So it's in the pre-inspection agreement that the client signs that tells them like what would be checked and what will not be checked. And then if they really had a concern about something, we have like a client ask us this when they call and book the inspection, or we've had agents say, hey, we noticed that there were cracks in the basement foundation. Can you take a look? Can you make sure you take a look at those? Yes, we would, but it's nice to know that those are your major worries.
Yeah.
To make sure that they get covered, especially in like the walkthrough with the client. So like, yeah, it would be in the report, but sometimes the reports can be long and lengthy. And I think this is an overwhelming time for home buyers and sellers, like just, getting a mortgage pre-approved, packing up your boxes, making sure like you time everything right. And so we know it can be overwhelming. So yes, it's nice to know ahead of time, maybe what their major concerns were, and then we can kind of cover that in the walkthrough with them if they come. That's a good question. Isaac. Yeah. So they shouldn't offer advice on methods of like materials or cost to fix components. And then we can't comment on market value, and then we don't perform code inspections. It's like a big pet peeve of mine. And it shouldn't be, it's just silly. Oh, it's silly to like watch on like social media, like when inspectors call out code. That's what I'm saying, like it's a pet peeve of mine, like, what are you doing? So insurance coverage should include, E&O insurance. All right, educating the home buyer. So I'm gonna guess, Adriana, when you find a client, most of them are gonna tell you like, I want, and they're like, what kind of house are you looking for? How many bedrooms they want, how many bathrooms they want, if they want a big walk-in shower, if they want a big open kitchen. They probably don't tell you, I want a reliable furnace, I want a reliable roof. Or I want to know the roof has been installed in the last 5 years. Like, that's just not stuff that they think about. And most buyers know a little about construction. So answering these questions confidently will put their minds at ease. And that's where a home inspector is nice, because then like, that's like their expertise. And then you can kind of focus on all the things that you need to focus on for the client. And then informed buyers are more satisfied and can better anticipate and plan for maintenance and repairs. And then home inspectors also play a role in client satisfaction after they move in. We've had clients then, and we encourage this, like that would then reach out to us, for like, hey, I saw this after, because sometimes things come up afterwards. They weren't in the house that day. Maybe then it rained and they noticed like pooling, up beside the side of the house or something. Or I'm trying to think of what else we've had people call and ask for. This is a big one. This one breaks my heart too. This was last week. Somebody called, we did an inspection for them, but they said they didn't want a sewer scope inspection. It's like, I forget, I think it's like $150 to add on, somewhere around there. Denied it, totally fine, that's their right. He has a problem with the sewage system. He has a problem with the pipes. And so he called, I mean, he knew, he's like, hey, I know, like, I didn't get this done. But it makes me really sad for him to think like, oh my gosh, it was just, I don't know. So different things like that can come up too. And so just know like your client can always reach out to the home inspector, or you can even after the deal is closed. It shouldn't be like, oh, sorry, it's done. But kind of like going off of that note, if there's repairs that you are asking for, and maybe this is later on, if there's repairs that you're gonna ask for in a negotiation and the seller agrees to them, please have them rechecked by the inspector. I can't tell you how many times that happens and the client calls us and we say, did you close on the house? Well, yeah, but this wasn't done right. Well, at that point, like all negotiations are off the table. You know what I mean? Like they signed everything. So, please call us. We don't mind. We go back out and we'll do one reinspection for free. And because that's not on your client.
Are you saying like doing that
Before you close, yes, like if you had an inspection done and let's say the HVAC system wasn't working and the client agreed to repair it, or the seller agreed we'll repair it. And so then let's say and again, I don't think it's like intentional. I think it's that you brought someone out there, you thought that they completed the job kind of a thing. The listing agent called the buyer's agent, was like, yep, it's fixed. So let's keep moving forward. And we've actually gone back out and been like, actually, it's not fixed. It's still not operating correctly. And so that's just where it's good. Cause you have this little window of time where you get to negotiate all those things. And once it's all signed, then it's over. So please don't feel like you can't reach back out and do a reinspection for your client.
So when you say that you guys do one reinspection without a cost, would that include like you guys coming out to like re-inspect an area, like if they couldn't access like the attic?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so if we wanted like a final walkthrough type inspection, then that would maybe incur a cost if we'd already had you come back out.
Yes, and that's kind of like just based on maybe our owner and how he's feeling. I will tell you, I only know of one reinspection that he charged for, and I think they had to go there 3 times and it was an hour away. And so he was kind of like, and what you can do is the seller can pay for that. Like that buying agent had the seller pay for it. And it was kind of one of the things where they're like, okay, you know what I mean? Like people were just being taken advantage of, time was being taken advantage of on multiple parties, and they just kind of felt like they needed to, um, kindly communicate that, but I think he's only charged once, for that. But yeah, I guess our belief, we know that we lose money on that. I mean, I'm not gonna deny that. Our belief is though, like, that's not your client's fault. They couldn't prepare the house, you know? And so, and there's only so much, Audrey, you can do. You can tell the listing agent, hey, we're coming. Here's some tips to make sure the house is ready, but you can't make them. So, we just don't think that's fair to you guys. And then, so a good inspector will explain the scopes and limitations. They'll make sure the client reads and signs the pre-inspection agreement. That's on our end and how we do things, like it's in a system, so it notifies us if they didn't, and like it gets signed, even at the walkthrough if it has to. Your home inspector should invite the buyer along for an inspection if they want to come to the walkthrough. And they explain kind of how long it will be, the cost, and when they can inspect or expect the report. I'm so sorry. I feel like I can't read to save my life today. My brain is just not working.
It's Tuesday.
It
It's like first
is,
thing in the morning.
it is, and then like Audrina, both my kids are hard of hearing and they have hearing aids, and my youngest is like playing this game right now where she gets in the car and then like won't put them in, so then it's like this loud noise and she's crying, like, but I can't fit him in. I'm like, okay, well, I'll help you when we get to school, so I just feel like it was sensory overload this morning for my brain.
Am I just driving a vehicle, sweetie?
Yeah, I'm like, I'm driving a moving vehicle, I can't hop back there and try to put these in your ears, like, calm down. And then, so this is helpful, like, for your sellers, Adriana, like, they should secure their pets. I will tell you, we've had people that don't, but they let us know ahead of time, hey, my dog is really nice. Is it okay if they're in the house? And that's always nice to know. Because sometimes the dog's really nice to them, but it's not so nice when a strange man walks in the house. We have some really great videos of Josh because he's maybe a little afraid of dogs.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, turn off security alarms. Good story about that. We've had the cops called on us. That was a great experience. Yeah. We're
It
like,
doesn't feel it's sort of, yeah.
yeah, we're like, oh, okay. Luckily then the cop, I mean, granted, they're in shirts that say what they're doing. But the cop that came out ironically played, like baseball with Josh and Blake, so.
Oh, okay.
He was
good.
like, yeah, he's like, all right, I think this is kosher, but like, we'll call the person. And remove obstructions to like the furnace and water heater, the electrical panel, the attic, the garage and crawl space are, areas that we typically kind of see. And again, it's not intentional most of the time. We would like to just see the best in people and see that they're just, it's a stressful, chaotic time. They're just trying to move their stuff. And Adriana, we do have kind of like a little handout type of thing that shows things that should happen before an inspection. So if you would like that to be able to like give to your clients, so you don't have to make up your own. I know that you're busy. Let me know and we can get that to you. We have a marketing team that is great. We just say, hey, we have realtors that would really like this. And they put together this really pretty looking thing.
Yeah, I love
And-
that.
Okay, I'm gonna mark that down to give you that. I feel like we're probably out of time, aren't we? I'm just looking at this.
Like 5 minutes.
Okay, so,
Well, also, it's like, it didn't go over, like,
It's okay.
my class until 10, I did that on purpose, so like, there's like conversations.
okay,
Yeah, no rush.
all right, well, thank you.
Yeah.
And then Adriana, you might already know this, that inspections can include more than just like the whole home inspection. So that's like the meat and potatoes, but there are add-on services like septic, water, well, termite, radon, mold, different things like that. Do you know about radon? This is another hill I like die on. Okay. So the national average is 1 in 11 homes test high for elevated levels of radon. And in Northeast Indiana, it's 1 in every 3 homes test high for radon. So we have a high radon level in our area. It's not anything anyone's doing. It's just how the way like, I don't really know a lot about geology or that, but it's something of the way things break down. And it can be like so like, it's not always just in basements, and like your house in your neighborhood, if you live in one, like your house can be fine, but your next door neighbors is elevated. Our neighbor right across the street, their levels were elevated and had to have a system put in, ours are not. So just in case if you hear that down the road of like through the grapevine, like, oh no, if the neighbor has it, it's not true. Oh. And then I feel like that's it. We talked through like how to communicate it to your client. I can quickly just show you do I say end show?
Yes.
Okay,
There you go.
we have like an example inspection report. And so I feel like there's so many of them. Well, I'll just pull this one up. I really don't know anything about these, because then Blake usually does this part. Does anyone else get nervous on these? I feel like I'm never gonna get the right amount.
I always think there's like, there's like a mini motorcycle in the background.
Right, or like, do you mean that wheel too? Like, what do you mean here? So Adriana, this is kind of what our report looks like. Again, like every inspector has their own report software or system that they use. We have where this can be a PDF version, or it's interactive like this. So you could go through and your client or you can then look at kind of like each major component. You know, you can see the roof. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
I think she can.
It looks like it's still on the power.
Oh, wait,
Okay,
So I don't know if it froze on my end.
okay.
Let me try something. I'll do stop share and then we'll do this.
Good, okay.
Okay,
All right.
Hey.
So this is an interactive version of the report. And so your client then can see, or you can go through and see like roof, exterior, you know, heating, cooling, all that. And then I believe over here, I don't want to misspeak, but we kind of like this because it's a report at a glance. You can kind of see, okay, there were 7 items they called out that were maintenance items. And then these 5 orange ones are like actual recommendations and more of like something that you and your client would maybe talk about of if you're going to ask for them in negotiations or not. And so then you can kind of see over here by the roof, there was one thing that they called out. So you could quickly like click on that and be able to look through. And then it's right here's the thing that's called out, the one in yellow. And so we will also, I like to pull this up too. We've had other realtors tell us, and I really love this tip. But again, I'm not a realtor, so take it as you please. Maybe it's not helpful. That then they'll just take this and instead of you having to like find your own wording, they'll kind of take the wording that's in here and put it in the, sorry, now I clicked on something and it went all the way. They will take the wording that's in here and just be able to copy and paste it into your inspection response to then hopefully kind of save you some time too. We know sometimes that comes in under the wire, or you have kids at home, you're trying to put them to bed, but you got to get this submitted by midnight. So that's kind of a helpful tip. That's kind of all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I think.
Okay. Well, just know if something comes up, if 3 days from now, you're like, wait, I should have asked this, or why didn't they cover this? Call us. We're happy to answer anything. Also, if you're ever at a walkthrough with a client, just kind of looking at houses, we've had Frankie, actually, that's Frankie Dials that's here. She FaceTimed Blake the other day and was like, hey, I'm looking at this house. Sometimes he can answer, sometimes he can't. But he answered for her and she was like, hey, can you look at this real quick and like, let me know. And so that's kind of nice because then it maybe saves you some time of like, do we want to put an offer in on this or not? So if you're ever at a walkthrough with a client, you're not sure, you can also snap a picture of something and send it over too, right? Well, thanks for hopping on today, Adriana, and I know what it feels like to try to juggle motherhood and starting your own business. So you've got this. If it's hard, you're doing it right. If you feel like it's unbalanced, you're doing it right. And we're here for you and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
All right, bye.